Hello again, this is Kurgan here, and today I'm talking about a new patch for the WarZ. This patch came out on January 22nd, and it's got some pretty interesting things to it. So let's dive into the patch notes. Now this patch is called 1.0.1. That's kind of surprising to me. I actually haven't looked at the version numbers before. It's interesting that they finally have just got to 1.0, or that they're not way behind that, considering that it's supposedly just in beta right now. But either way, the first thing that they did was they added nameplates to players, which this is kind of nice because sometimes if you've seen fishy actions before, the only way you could really report it or do anything about it was to die to this person because you couldn't get their name. It just, it wasn't possible unless you died to them. So now you'll be able to, if you actually put your crosshairs on somebody, see what their name is, and then if you think that something fishy is going on, you can log out, which I don't recommend doing unless you really are sure that this is somebody that is hacking or doing something that's not right, and then you can report them. So that's really cool to see something like that because it allows that to happen. And these nameplates, as far as I know, they only appear when you look at somebody, so it's not gonna be just floating over somebody's head and give them away. You actually have to look at them, and they came out with a hotfix for this as well to even make it a little bit better than that. Basically, the farther your target is away from you, the longer it takes for that name to pop up. So if you're using a sniper rifle and scanning a forest and trying to pick up nameplates, that's not going to be so easy now because you actually need to hold your scope on that person for a little while before their name's going to pop up. So that's really nice to see that because it would kind of suck. I know in DayZ a lot of the times when there was nameplates, you could basically spin towards a direction. If you spun in and looked into a forest, nameplates would pop up so easily. It was just a dead giveaway. So it's nice to see that they're kind of working on a system to tweak this so they don't give away people, but they actually have them in game because it is nice to see people's names. And to add to that, they've actually added reputation to the game, which there's reputation before. That's what Bandit and Hero is, or Mega Bandit and all that good stuff. But now, since they have the visible nameplates, you basically get a red or a green bar with that as well. And you can see this on people when you look at them. Green is good, red is bad. Now, before it was kind of hard to tell if somebody was working towards Bandit or Hero because a lot of people are neutral. I've actually never had a bandit or a hero. I've always just kind of been the neutral guy no matter what. So it's kind of hard to judge those people, especially fresh characters. Right now, a lot of people are going to be neutral, So you got to make that decision on, do you want to let this guy kind of skate away? Let's say he's a fresh spawn. Maybe he died to somebody and he has got a green name. Well, maybe I'm going to let him go because it seems like he has been a good guy in whatever he's done in his previous life. Where if it's red, I've ran across people who have died, and then you kill them and they complain about it, and then when you check the login screen, sure enough, that's a bandit. So I don't feel so bad about it. So that bar is going to put that choice out there for people, and now they're going to know that if you make that kill, if you choose to kill that person and you become a bandit, people are going to know about it. When they look at you, they're not going to be able to go, well, I don't know who that person is. I can't see their name. I can look and see a bandit's on the server. But that doesn't mean that they're the same person. So now when you can see that name, you're going to know that person's a bandit or working towards it, or a hero and working towards that. So it adds some weight to the decision. You might let some heroes go. So that's really cool to see that there's actually that option now that you can see that if people are good or bad. And on top of that, they've added the leaderboards, which I think they've been talking about this for a while. It's really cool to see. If you go into the community tab on the main menu screen, you'll see these paired with your clans basically, and it has things like longest played time, most zombies killed, most kills, most bandit kills, most civilian kills, that kind of stuff. There's I want to say about 8 categories that they stat track so far. So it's kind of cool. You can try and get first. I mean, you can see, I think there's already some hackers on top of them because the patch has only been out, I'd say, about 24 hours now, and there's some people with almost 400 kills. I'm not saying that that's impossible. I don't know. I usually don't play the 100 pop servers, but that seems a little crazy. So that'll also give away some of those hackers that do want to do that kind of stuff because their stats will just be right out there for the community. People can see that and go, oh, this looks a little ridiculous here. So, and if you want to go for first, if you want to be the top, zombie kills or something like that, now you can see what everybody else has in the community. So it's really cool to have that option there. And they do have hardcore and normal stat tracks separately. So if you want to challenge a hardcore, it's there for you, and you'll be, rewarded if you consider that rewarded to be on the top of the board. So pretty cool stuff. And they've also changed how new spawn characters work. Now, if you remember when you bought the game, your 5 first spawns had a flashlight and some random supplies. So after that, when you respawn your characters, they got absolutely nothing. You had to get into town and use your expertise of already playing the game to survive. Well, they've changed that just slightly. They've given everybody a flashlight now. No matter what, if it's your first 5 or your 100th, you've got a flashlight. So that's kind of nice to see. Not because it was necessary, but it's nice to have a melee weapon. And the problem with it before, with the flashlight, is you couldn't turn it off. So even if they gave me one, I probably wouldn't use it. I actually liked the flashlight, at least more so than the bat, because it had a fast swing speed. But since you couldn't turn it off, it was just a dead giveaway. And that leads me to another patch note. You can now turn the flashlight off. So it's actually, I mean, it takes a lot of hits to kill things, but it's a pretty good starter weapon. And how you turn it off is just by pushing F. So it's pretty cool that they're giving everybody that to start with. It takes a lot of hits to kill a player with, so it's nothing overpowered to have. It's just a good way to maybe allow you to get into town and kill a few zombies and hope to find a hammer or something like that. So pretty cool to see that. Also, they've added a flare gun to the game. Now I really want to get my hands on this because I've thrown some flares and some chem lights around, and it's cool, it's fun to play with them, but they're not going to go that far. Whereas now the flare gun, I'm really curious on the distance it actually fires, because if you had a good amount of ammunition for it, you could actually fire it at your enemies. So let's say you're in Boulder City and you know somebody is holed up in a building and you got 5 or 6 flares and you start popping them in the window to their building. It's going to give them away so quickly. You're going to see, their little character standing up there with a lit up background, and if they've got night vision on or anything else like that, if you're fighting at night, it's going to be bright as hell to them. So really cool. I kind of want to try this weapon out. I'm also curious if it actually does some damage. It would be pretty fun to get some flare gun kills, but I'm kind of thinking it does not. And the big problem, this is with any of these types of games, is server hopping. They've been trying to toy with the system to tweak it and make it so it's not so advantageous. Before, basically, you could log out in a spot and log in that exact same spot. So if you knew that somebody was sitting in a certain spot, you just had to go to a different server, log out in that spot, and then log in and kill them. So really kind of shitty. Well, now basically how this works is when you spawn in the general vicinity. There's no more exact spawning where you logged out. So it's not a perfect fix, but it does eliminate being able to hop directly onto somebody. Let's say if they've got a nice bunker set up with some barriers in the back of a store, you can't just jump into the back of the store with them and screw them. So their hard work of actually collecting these barriers and setting up back there is not going to be just spoiled by somebody who's logging in on them. So I like seeing something like this, and hopefully they keep working with a system to stop server hopping so much. And for people who like to take a lot of in-game photos, I like to take a few, mostly for the beginning or the ends of my videos, or maybe for something to put in between while I put some text over it. You can now get rid of the HUD by pushing F12, so it allows us to take some really good screenshots. Before, it kind of sucked because you always had that chat box that was up, and that took up so much of the screen. It was really hard to get a good screenshot that was actually usable because of that chat box. Well, now, since you can just push F12 and turn it off, that's awesome. It allows us to actually get some screenshots that are usable besides the ones that were put out by the developers. So really cool to see that. And the next thing that they mention is you can now properly zoom in and out of the map, which I've seen some people complain about this. I really don't think it's a huge deal, but it's kind of nice to see. It's a start. Hopefully they do some other tweaks with the map, maybe setting up markers or something like that, but it shows that they're actually working on it. So if you do want to zoom in, I'm curious in how high of resolution that the map actually is. I haven't actually zoomed in on it, so I guess we'll have to see, but it's a start of map tweaks, and hopefully they continue doing more of them. And next we got a really exciting one. Toxicity has been added to the game. Now, what this is basically a system for being hit by zombies and being infected. So really cool to see this, because it means that there's actually some weight to it instead of just being hit by zombies and escaping and tossing on a bandage. Now, supposedly, I haven't been infected yet or been affected by toxicity, but the more you get hit, the more this affects you, and you're going to need to find a vaccine, which is really cool. There's actually use for these now, so make sure to keep maybe a few vaccines around. I'm not sure if this is a buggy system yet or not, though, so that's something that's going to be really interesting to see as well. But you keep these around, and you're going to have to use them, and if you get too toxic, you're going to start losing health over time, and the only way to stop that is either to get that vaccine or to die. So I would say living is a better choice. So keep those vaccines around. I know that I'll be throwing a few in my global inventory just in case. I don't know how fast the bleed rate is for when you're severely infected. So if it's pretty quick, you might almost actually need to keep one on you, which I think that it should be pretty quick, especially if you get hit a lot of times by zombies. So it's going to be interesting to see if this is determined just by the amount of times you got hit while you were alive or the severity of the hits. Like if you got hit and brought down to your ankles in life, are you going to be more toxic than if you took 10 hits over a long duration where you just bandaged up? They were all just, one hit. So pretty interesting system, and I'm glad that they're finally starting to work on a system that makes zombies more of a threat in the game and have a little bit more of a weight in the situations that you're in. And the next is backpack weights. Now this is something they've been toying with for a while. You could see each of them had the weights, but this is nothing that I've ever had affected me. The weights were extremely low and the backpacks had an extremely high carry rate, so it wasn't a system that ever really mattered to anybody. But now they've reduced the max backpack weight, and they're starting to work on the system of actually assigning weights to things to make it so you're not just limited by the slots in your backpack. You are limited by the actual item weight. So if you pick up a bunch of weapons or something like that, or a bunch of body armors, you're not going to be able to just walk around with a whole arsenal in your backpack, because obviously something like an M107 weighs more than a can of tuna. So it's cool that they're starting to work with this, because since like food stacks as well, 500 cans of tuna, that's obviously not going to fit in the backpack either. So it's nice to see the weight system being worked on, and they actually hotfix this as well and reduce the weights that backpacks can carry. I'm not sure if they weren't happy and thought that they could still carry too much, so I haven't got the play since the hotfix, so we'll see what that all means. And some performance optimizations. They did some memory optimizations. We'll see what kind of effects that actually have on the frame rates in game. My frames actually have been pretty good. I play on almost all ultra settings, so even to gain a few more for recording, that's kind of nice to see. Any kind of performance optimizations out there are always a welcome fix. So, and then they changed the targeting reticle back to the cross again. They had said that the cross was too accurate before and went with the circle, but I guess they found that that really doesn't matter. So the cross is back, which is a little bit more accurate, I guess. It's not that it's more accurate, but it's easier to use because you can place the center on your target a little bit easier. So I kind of like that it's back. The circle didn't really affect me too much, but it was a little bit more clunky. So it's not a huge change, but it is something. And now they're starting to work on the art of the cities and the art of the game. They've added overgrowth to a lot of the main city structures. If you looked a lot at the artwork for the game that was promotional, that is, altered, there's a lot of overgrowth and a lot of Boulder and Campos and such, because these towns are abandoned. So it's really cool that they're going to start working on the actual setting and make it feel like these are abandoned towns, and it sounds like they're going to be working on it more. They say this is still a work in progress, so the more they can add of this, the better. I think it's going to look really awesome. I remember when they did the changes to Boulder where they added the military vehicles up front and some of them more in back, and changed up some of the buildings. I thought it looked amazing, so I hope they keep plugging at this because they've done a good job with it already. It's just hopefully it doesn't have an impact on frames per second. That might be something to do with the memory optimizations as well. Beyond that, they've added a bunch of furniture to the interior of buildings and houses. So that's going to make it feel like this is a world that people lived in, when you walk into a house and there's nothing inside, that doesn't make a ton of sense, There should be some chairs and there should be some couches, because this was a place where people lived. They needed to sit down. They didn't just sit on the floor. So that's really cool. Really cool that they're adding that stuff and making it a bit more immersive. And they've also opened up the interiors of some of the additional buildings. I haven't got to see any of these yet. I'm kind of curious on if they've added more floors to the cities in Boulder, or to the buildings in Boulder, or what they've done, because the more interiors that you can go into, the better. It's really nice to have an immersive world like that, where now we're going to have more furniture, and we're going to have overgrowth, and we're going to have more buildings that we can go into, instead of just a building that's solid that you cannot go into. But on top of that, part of the hotfix as well says that doors have been fixed in new buildings, and you can now walk through them. I assume that basically they put doors on these buildings, and then they forgot that you can't walk through the doors, so you couldn't even go into some of these new buildings, which this is probably a temporary fix. I don't know if they'll remove the doors or eventually make it so doors are openable, but for now you can just walk through these doors. I'm not a huge fan of that, because you can probably peek in third person, and it's probably a decent advantage to do something like this, especially if somebody doesn't know that you can enter these buildings. But it's a start. hopefully they keep working at it and making more buildings available to be gone into. And that's basically it for the big patch note changes. There's some other small ones, like they added a mini Saint snack to the game. They fixed a few crashes with reloading a weapon. They fixed a bug that had characters set to revive at 99 hours, which would really suck. They also added reputation shown in the inventory of the game. Fixed a bug when dropping attachments that wouldn't remove it from the weapon, so that would allow you to duplicate it at least the time that you were playing. They added more spawn locations, so that's nice because I know that people spawn camp. They knew that a fresh spawn would spawn in a certain specific spot, you know, so if you sat in Campos, you could look outside the grocery store and see people spawning in the woods, and if you had a sniper rifle, you could just be picking them off as they spawned in on a high pop server. So that's cool to see something like that. And also the last change is that your reputation changes, going from hero to bandit, all that kind of stuff, are actually shown in the chat area. It's only shown to you, but it at least gives you that update while you're playing, so you're going to know if you've achieved a new rank. Most likely going to be bandit, but there are some heroes out there, which is props to you guys. That's awesome. So that's it for these patch notes. I think they've done a good job, and hopefully they continue at it. I know they've caught a lot of flack for it, but I think they're plugging along very well. So hopefully we see another patch within a week or two that adds some more things and some more fixes and more buildings to be entered and that kind of stuff. So as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. This is Kurgan.